Common Knowledge is brought to you by PureMTGO.com and InkedGaming.com. Use coupon code CCMTG10 at checkout for a 10% discount on all Inked Gaming supplies and accessories. You can support the show directly through Patreon at patreon.com/common knowledge.
This is the Common Knowledge Podcast. It's not about the cost, it's about the knowledge. Here are your hosts, Brandon Clark and Lobbert.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to episode 69 of the Common Knowledge Podcast, the greatest episode of Common Knowledge in the history of Common Knowledge. And why is that, Sean? Why would that be?
There are multiple reasons. First is the episode number.
What's the episode number have to do with anything?
I don't know. Second is there was a ban announcement.
I know! Big announcement! Huge announcement. Bigger than I would have ever imagined. I thought just Gush, but we got Daze and Gataxian Probe out of here.
Yeah, and like we both met up and like no show notes were written and we were just like, I don't think we need them.
This episode is going to be fueled by hype. Just pure hype.
Yeah, I've been just psyched to play the format, and I've just been jamming games as much as I can.
I'm really close to selling one of my modern decks. I have Storm and Burn built, and I'm just like, I think I'm just going to sell my Burn deck and just try to get more foils for Pauper. Just like so excited about playing this format again.
Yeah, I think we were trying to be okay with how the format was because we didn't want to we still had to operate within what the format was at the moment, but back in December we were already saying like, this doesn't feel good. There's something off here. So if you're curious what I think Common Knowledge's perspective on the ban announcement is, I mean, I tweeted, I am over the moon about it. I've just been so excited. I brought some decks that I haven't played in months, half a year, just because I just don't think that they can keep up. Brought them out, and I've gotten positive results. I've made money playing these janky decks. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Sort of the implications. Yeah, the implications that this banning has for the format, what it means maybe for some of our favorite decks going forward. For me, I have a couple decks I want to talk about. I know Sean's got some sweet brews that he wants to talk about. So yeah, buckle up. This is going to be a fun episode.
And what we think the meta is going to look like going forward, new top decks, where things stand. And then I think towards the end of the episode, we do have kind of a little controversy to spice things up.
Yeah. So let's just jump into the thick of things with our card of the week.
Card of the week.
This is a card that I'm excited for. This is my card of the week. This is the card that I think gains the most from Gush being banned in the format, and that is Mole Drifter. I mean, obviously on its face, we've got a 5-mana spell that lets you draw 2 cards, so they're basically identical, right? No, I mean, obviously Mole Drifter is just less powerful than Gush was, but with Gush gone, I think that Mole Drifter is now the most powerful draw spell in the format.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like card advantage goes, yeah, I mean, if you're throwing in like Ponder Preordain, yeah, you muddy it, but like
I don't really consider cantrips as draw spells. I feel like, I don't know. To me, they're a little different. Like when I'm talking about cantrips, I'm talking about cantrips, and when I'm talking about like draw spells, like cards that draw cards, like that's their function.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense, but I always think about them separately.
Yeah, this is the Mac Daddy of card advantage in Pauper. Like, speaking of not writing show notes, we didn't write any here because it's so easy to talk about how good this card is.
Yeah. So I guess for those who don't know, Muldrifter is 4 and a blue for a 2/2 flying creature that says when it enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards. And it has Evoke, which for 2 and a blue, you may cast the spell for its Evoke cost. If you do, it's sacrificed when it enters the battlefield. So it enters the battlefield, the Evoke trigger gets put on the stack, and the draw 2 gets put on the stack.
And you get to choose the order that those resolve in, because you get to place them on the stack in any order. That makes some really cool combinations with anything that, if a creature would die, you bring it back to the battlefield. Also, like Ghostly Flicker.
If you have 6 mana up, you can pay the Evoke cost for Muldrifter, and then Ghostly Flicker with the Evoke trigger on the stack. Or if you're digging for something, you can stack it so that the draw trigger will resolve before the Evoke trigger resolves. So you'll draw your cards before you have to sacrifice the Muldrifter, and then you have a shot at drawing into something to bounce the Muldrifter or whatever.
Right, and the body is super respectable. A 2/2 in the air is going to trade with pretty much everything besides a Core Skyfisher. That's like the only exception. Everything else...
I feel so good about trading this with anything you can, because at that point it feels like a 3-for-1. Like you've gotten 2 cards out of it and you traded a card with your opponent for it. Like it's just a literal 3-for-1. It doesn't feel like a 3-for-1. It is a 3-for-1.
And if you're just on 3 mana and you can't cast your first Muldrifter, evoking it and ensuring that you're going to hit your next land drop is really, really good. And there's a high chance that you're going to find another threat. Like, you're going to find another Muldrifter. So, like, the Evoke making this, like, both a early-ish game and a late-game powerhouse just makes this card fantastic. What we're saying, why this is the card of the week is, in our previous meta, casting a 5-mana spell, unless you were on Tron, just wasn't realistic. Now that Daze is gone, it makes a lot more sense to try to do something like this.
Yeah, and I was excited about playing with Muldrifters with Gush gone just on the back of it making Daze decks less powerful. But there was still always that looming, just like, this card is not going to be that great against the Blue Delver decks because you're just never casting a 5-mana spell before you're dead. But Wizards just solved that problem for me. They banned Daze and Gush altogether. So,
yeah, one of my early early hangups with Muldrifter was that I don't want to be tapping out in my blue deck, and this takes up almost all of my mana. That's pretty easily remedied when you're playing something like blue-black control, in that you have all of the catch-up spells in removal spells. So you've now got a blocker, you can catch up because you're ahead on cards, remove some of their guys, and bam, you're 3 cards up.
Yeah, and like you can even feel good about tapping out for that Muldrifter too, because one, like you said, the catch-up is just so easy in this format. This isn't like other formats where the control decks are so worried about, I guess, their answers. Like, there's just very few things in this format that a removal spell just can't answer. And so oftentimes you're just very safe to cast your Muldrifter, play it, get a body on the board that can probably trade with one of your opponent's creatures, or trade with a spell out of your opponent's hand. And like in that case, they're taking up their turn to kill this Muldrifter instead of advancing the board. It makes it that much easier when you untap with a fresh grip of cards to catch back up.
Yeah, so I expect to see a lot of Muldrifters, but do you want to move into our main topic segment, or you got anything else?
No, let's do it. Main topic time.
Main topic.
Our main topic, I think for the first part, is we're just going to talk about this ban announcement and kind of what this means. So I think the big surprise here is that they banned Gitaxian Probe. I don't think there was anything super glaring with Gitaxian Probe of like, this is breaking this, but it was an overpowered card altogether. Like,
I think that the banning did like a couple things. It created uniformity. Now Gitaxian Probe is banned in every format. So I guess fair is fair. I don't know. If Legacy can't play with it, why should we? I don't know. But I really liked in the announcement, I really liked the explanation that Wizards gave for it. Gitaxian Probe allowed decks to utilize cards like Augur of Bolas better, because they could lower their land count and just play more of those spells, more of those key cards, because Gitaxian Probe basically just says you have a 56 card deck. And so it just like enabled, it was just like the things that Gitaxian Probe enabled. Like having perfect information so you knew what to do with your other cantrips, like enabling cards like Augur Bolas, Feeling Delve for Gurmag Angler, empowering all those other powerful blue cards. Like Gitaxian Probe on its face isn't like overpowered. It's not like warping formats or warping games like, oh, my opponent cast Gitaxian Probe, I can't win this game anymore. It was just facilitating the brokenness of so many other spells that I think that it was fine that it went.
Right. I actually felt this. I ran through 2 leagues with Burn already, and I was running 4 Gitaxian Probes in that deck.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, so it hurts a lot, actually. Like, I didn't think it would hurt that much, but get to Lava Runners, and like it was triggering all of my stuff. It was enabling my Lava Runners to just sometimes have that broken start of turn 1 you do this, or turn 1 you double probe maybe and attack, or the more reasonable thing of turn 1 I probe once, I play my Lava Runner, and then I'm free to play a 2 mana burn spell or something like that turn 2. And the things I'm replacing it with, yeah, they're damage spells, but I would just rather have some of those other optimal spells in my hand, so it brought that deck down. I can't imagine what it did to the decks that it used it better than that.
Yeah, the only other deck that I can really think of that got hurt by Gitaxian Probe being banned are already decks that are just hurt from the lack of Gush. So like the Blue-Black Delver decks, I think those decks can evolve. I don't know if you saw the spoiler for the 1/1 Changeling that's unblockable, but I think that we're going to see some sort of new amalgam of Blue-Black where we're looking at like a Spell Stutter Sprite package to replace the Dazes. This 1/1 Changeling facilitates that. It makes Ninja the Deep Hours better. So I'm curious if we're just going to see Blue-Black Delver turn into basically what Scred Delver is, just with black cards instead of red cards. But
my personal thoughts on that are just that black is going to be your off color in that deck, and so having your 1-drop be something in your off color is a pretty big no-no, and it doesn't generate advantage like the other spells. It's just kind of a low power card that you're putting in your deck. So I don't see that happening, but we're also in a place where much more reasonable things like that are possible. It doesn't have to be this, like, the bar has been lowered is what I'm saying, I guess. And maybe that is a lot more reasonable. I just that I'm skeptical of.
But anyway, my point was that the decks that are hurt by losing Gitaxian Probe are just hurt anyway from losing Gush. I think the Delver decks will find a way to rebound regardless of what it is. But the one deck that is just dead is Tribe. Like, that deck is just dead.
Yeah,
I think it can survive without Probe or Gush. So
yeah, I think it's possible that there have been like cleric decks in the past that do a similar thing, where there's an infinite combo with 2 clerics where they both get infinite toughness, and then you just switch one of them. It actually gives all of your clerics infinite toughness. So that's a possibility, but definitely kind of how it functions now, that deck is not... I don't think it's happening with that deck. Something that... one deck that I think more than people are giving it credit for as a question mark is it Blitz? Like, that it does seem that it did lose a lot of its really good cards, and I've noticed that edicts have gotten a lot better in the meta right now. There's a lot more people running those, a lot more. So that it'll probably take a break, but I don't think that this is
which I find
the
is
complete
interesting.
death.
I find is interesting. I still don't think that edicts are particularly great. What's changed about the format to make edicts better? Except for that Spellstutter Sprite decks are better now, which to me just means edicts are worse. There's still Augur Bolus running around in all the blue decks. Like, I just don't see that anything's changed enough or will change enough with the new meta. I still see cards like Augur Bolus being major players. I guess that like aggressive decks are just better and you just take what you can get against those decks. You don't really care what 2/2 you're killing from the Stompy deck. Like, you just want to get one of them off the board. I just don't see edicts being better.
Well, I think that the surrounding deck has, like, the deck that it goes in got a lot better. I think that blue-black control completely died, and I think that deck is coming back in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
I played against a lot of those. I even saw the blue-black flicker deck pop up more than once in my... I ran like 6 competitive leagues this week. The first few I was really adjusting, and like I was playing less than optimal decks and was surprised by what I was seeing, and so I did really poorly. And then towards the end of the week, I was getting the hang of it, but I did see a lot of blue-black control. Stompy, Stompy's I think back also in a big way. They were running Young Wolf in the main again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's sort of my thinking. See, I've got Alchemy built, and I've only got 2 Chainer's Edicts in my main deck, and I have 1 Diabolic Edict in my sideboard. Because there are still a few matches where an Edict is good, but I still just feel like for the most part, that's not where I want to be in my removal suite. I want to have like the full 4 Disfigures. I want Echoing Decay still. Like, I just don't think much has changed about the composition of the threats that are relevant in the format, that I want to be just jamming edicts into my deck anymore.
Okay, yeah, I think I can back you up on that. Like, I think that's right of you're not going up to 4 edicts in any deck. I just think that there are more decks running edicts at all.
And yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, blue-black alchemy, like the control decks, like you said, those were just dead. Like, those had just vanished from existence. And now that they're coming back, we are seeing more edicts, just because I don't think that people have really... I don't know that a lot of people have really meshed out that, like... I don't know. I think that a lot of people probably just picked up what the last decks looked like and are just jamming those, because, these are the kind of decks that you tune based on a meta. And again, the meta is still probably got a lot of shaking out to do. I imagine that's going to be a minute before the dust settles on like what this new meta is going to look like. But I think that, at least for now, my inclination is to as few edicts as possible. I still like having a couple, just because of the synergy with Forbidden Alchemy. It's just nice to like grab a spell and dump a edict into the graveyard that you can use later. But
this might be a holdover from what the meta was. A lot of white-black Pestilence running around. That became, I think, one of our top like 4 or 5 decks towards the end of...
And see,
that era.
I'd rather have Agony Warp in my deck to deal with Guardian of the Guild Pact than an Edict, just because that card's just more versatile than the Edicts are. I feel. I mean, they're targeted, so it's not like against a board of nonsense. Edict, and then my opponent gets to choose. I get to choose what I'm killing here, and Agony Warp is also multicolored. So it gets around the protection from monocolored the same as an Edict. It just has better utility in other matchups.
Yes. Do you want to talk about where we think Delver decks are going?
Yeah. I
mean, we did talk about that the new card that was spoiled, and perhaps the Changeling could mean that a blue-black fairy deck exists. Yeah. But I think that Skred Delver and Mono Blue Delver are more interesting to talk about and more like gonna be a thing.
I think that you're definitely right about the blue black thing, though. that if it does include that little changeling, it's like the composition of that deck is going to change a lot. It might not even be a base blue deck anymore, and we might just go see like a more mid-range blue-black kind of fairies ninja deck that might not even have a Delver of Secrets in it, and then Gurmag Angler at the top end. That could be a thing. So that might not even be a Delver deck anymore. But mono blue Delver, I think, has become considerably worse. Obviously, without Daze. Daze was one of the cards in that deck that I think made that deck so powerful. And without it, they just don't really have a lot of good answers anymore. Like, they've got counter spells and spell stutter sprites, but they don't have any good removal in their deck, like, at all. And so they're going to be falling really hard on their counter spells and their spell stutter sprites to deal with problem permanents. And that's just not always super reliable when you've only got, like, that's what you have. Like, they don't have that array of answers anymore.
Right. Mono blue, that deck has to be faster than your opponent, and it's a pure tempo deck, and it's moving from having a spell that costs 0 to something that costs more. And they always had the benefit of, well, your opponent has the option of playing on curve and potentially getting blown out, or playing a turn behind, and that was always tough for your opponent. What I've seen so far in this deck, I see people trying out Force Spike was the first one that I saw, and that really caught me off guard. And it felt it felt good still for them, of like, okay, I'm not sure if I can do this, but they had a penalty of they had to leave an untapped blue source up. I've seen people trying to run Arcane Denial, which I think I'm really opposed to. When I've played against Arcane Denial, the deck I was playing was just Spire Golems and Spell Stutter Sprites in just like the hard control blue deck, and like excludes and accumulated knowledge, that type of stuff. Really, really cool deck. But when my opponent was forced to cast Arcane Denial, I was just so happy.
I think that card is great in lightning fast combo EDH decks. But I don't think that card is playable in Pauper. I guess, like, unless you are also a combo deck and you just need it to protect your combo. But if you're trying to play like the outvalue tempo game that a mono blue Delver deck is trying to play, not into Arcane Denial at all.
Right, and what the deck was really trying to do with that card, I think, is the best mode of that card is like you cast like a Think Twice, and this is like the bigger blue, like you just run Spire Golems and Spell Stutter Sprites, nothing else. You cast like Think Twice and counter it yourself, so you'll still get the back end of Think Twice later, but then you end up drawing 3 cards.
Mm-hmm.
And
that seems like a lot of holes to jump through to make that card slightly less mediocre.
Right. I mean, that's the best version of it, and the worst version of it is it's a clutch counterspell when you need it. And your opponent might draw less good cards, and you've gotten rid of what they've got now. And I'm still not on board with that card, but I just wanted to give it its fair, like, it does the thing, you know?
Yeah. Talk about the last deck, Skred. I think Skred has gotten considerably better. Obviously, like the deck itself has gotten worse because you've taken the single most powerful spell out of that deck. But its position in the meta, obviously, it's gotten better. It's now the top Delver deck, or will be, in my opinion. The decks, I think, a lot of people are transitioning to accumulated knowledge. I've given Hieroglyphic Illumination a try, and I think that card's fine in Skred, because Skred's always been a little more about getting that higher land count than the other Delver decks were. So I think that Hieroglyphic Illumination was fine. I literally just took the Gushes out of my deck and replaced them with Illuminations and just played with them. But I do really like Accumulated Knowledge. I think that card's pretty good. I think that Fire and Ice has gotten is just much better going forward as well. And so having a strong Fire Ice deck like Skred Delver is going to be really powerful. But overall, I don't think Skred is going to be. Well, I don't know. Maybe it will be. I don't know if it's going to be the boogeyman that it was before Blue Black Delver dethroned it. But I think it's still going to be like a contender in the metagame.
I think it's going to be a contender, but it's not going to get where it was before. Stompy is definitely back in a big way, and it's still going to cause problems for that deck. Like, Stompy has been a matchup that I think Skred Delver has had a harder time with than other decks.
Yep.
And it seems harder now for that. I mean, if it doesn't have Gush, then it has to be doing something slower to maintain that card advantage to fight any of the bigger decks, or it has to do something faster. I do think it's the better of the... I still think it's the better of the Delver decks, but it's not going to dominate and make things... it's never reaching 70 points again. I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's the best Delver deck going forward, but it's not the best deck in the format. Should we talk about the deck that people believe is the best deck in the format currently?
Go for it.
So, Tron. What do you think about Tron? That seems to be what everyone is clamoring about, that, like, this ban announcement hasn't really done anything. It just dethroned the Gush decks, and now the Tron decks are going to take that slot. What do you think about that?
I think that's more like, that's all in theory, but how it actually shakes out, I don't think is going to be like that. I think that as overall, our meta is more graveyard based, and I think there's going to be more graveyard hate running around than there ever has been. Like, if you're running accumulated knowledge in your main deck, then your opponent is going to bring in relics, or they're going to bring in Bojuka Bogs, or just have Bojuka Bogs, whatever. So I think that is going to bring down how good that deck is to start with. The aggro decks don't have to worry about Augur of Bolas taking up as big of a meta share, and they're going to be a lot better against Tron. I think Tron can mitigate that too, but it's going to be fighting things on multiple fronts, and it's just a more... I don't think that Tron can stay top dog as well. It doesn't just stand up to everything like the other decks did.
Yeah. The difference, I think, Tron does something incredibly powerful, but, like, the thing that made Blue-Black Delver so dominant was, one, it did do something incredibly powerful. It had these incredibly powerful, efficient threats that were hard to deal with, that would just kill you so fast. But it was also resilient to hate. Tron is a little bit more of a glass cannon. It kind of needs its graveyard. It needs to assemble all these pieces. It needs to have its Tron online. It needs to not die super quick to the aggro deck. Or there's just a lot of things that need to line up for the Tron decks to win. And I just don't think it can do it like consistently like Delver was, through all the hate that people will have for Tron. That are just, like you said, just like graveyard hate. Like, it's just universal. Like, graveyard hate's just good in the meta. It just happens to also be good at Tron. It's not like people are thinking like, oh, I need to put X cards in my sideboard for Tron. It's just relics are very good in this format. Bring them in against Tron.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that my sample size is really small, but I haven't seen a Tron deck yet at all.
Wow, in 6 leagues though?
Yeah, just nothing.
That's a little surprising, but it could also just be, that's only 30 matches.
I mean, and I didn't even finish the first 2. I 0-3 dropped. That's how bad those went. But yeah, I'm not so afraid of Tron as everybody else is. Like, I don't know. I just don't see it.
My thing is that, like, the way I'm seeing all these decks now, I'm thinking about Tron, and I'm thinking about Monarch decks, and I'm thinking about Alchemy decks, and Delver decks, and all these different things. And there's no deck in my mind that is just a clear, this is the best deck. All these decks seem very level, very even. which is good. Like that's just great. It just means that we have a level playing field for everybody, and people can just play the things they want to play with. And yeah, you'll get paired with your bad matchup, but you'll also just get paired with your good matchups, and it's fine. It's not like the last format where it was just everyone had a bad Delver matchup, and then it was just like I'm 50% against the rest of the field, and then I'm 40% against Delver, and just everyone had a bad matchup, and there was just this clear cut, this is the best deck. That just isn't the case anymore. And so I don't see any one deck dominating. I think that things are going to shake themselves out for sure, but I think things are very balanced again.
Yeah, I think, of course, decks like, I think Boggles and Elves and just solid decks like that are going to be some of our top decks, but those are things you can easily interact with. I guess we haven't talked about the Monarch, but that I'm also not so afraid of anymore. So I think Stompy getting pushed out was really bad for the meta, and now that aggro has been reintroduced to our format, we can have we can go back to power rankings where we're not looking at 10 decks and that's the end of our list. We can go back to a whole bunch of 2s. We can see some 4s and 5s and 6s. Like that. I'm so excited. You have no idea.
All right. Well, what have you been playing? Let's just talk about that. What deck have you been excited about?
I've been on mono white Monarch. Like, I just keep going through leagues with that deck. I'm still in the phase of blue-black control that I'm trying to figure out what list I want to play, and so I'm just playing casuals. I've decided that the what's it called? Devious Cover-Up is not the way to go. I've gone back to
there, but
it only took like 2 games.
I didn't think it would take long, but you mentioned it last week, Devious Cover-Up. I was like, all right, for science, I'll let him do his thing.
Yeah, and I just ended up like, I want to play Gurmag Angler. I want to play Moldrifter and Augur of Bolas, and I'm just going to beat people down and have way better than average removal and counter spells and do the blue-black control thing. And that's starting to hash out, but the mono-white Monarch deck that I've been playing, it just seems like people don't expect you to exile every creature they control very often, and you can get ahead of anything trying to be, like, I'm the bigger, badder deck by just, okay, well, I'm leaner and then I played a Monarch creature. So that's what I've been enjoying, and I realized that it's not meta yet. I just keep getting 4-1s with it. I'm just waiting for my 5-0.
So I kind of talked about what I've been doing. I still been playing a bit of Scred. I just replaced some of the cards. But the one I'm most excited about playing, again, is Blue-Black Alchemy, which is the What Are We Playing? And I've been kind of thinking about what I want this list to look like for a few weeks now in anticipation of a banning. I'm just laying out my deck, and then I can go through it. Okay, so this is the Blue-Black Alchemy list that I have thrown together in paper, and we'll be playing online as well for our What Are We Playing? Or, I mean, we'll make tweaks to it. I think there's a few things already that I'm thinking of changing, but so I've got 11 creatures, 4 Augur Bolas, 4 Moldrifter, 2 Gurmag Angler, 1 Stormbound Geist. Then my removal, I've got 4 Disfigure, 2 Chainer's Edict, 3 Echoing Decay, 2 Agony Warp, 1 Evankar's Justice, 4 Counterspells, 2 Soul Manipulations, 1 Dispel, and then I've got 4 Preordain, 3 Forbidden Alchemy, 1 Mystical Teachings.
Oh, Mystical Teachings, huh?
Yeah, just a one of. And then lands, 6 islands, 4 swamps, 4 Dimir Aqueduct, 4 Dismal Backwater, 2 Evolving Wilds, 1 Bajuka Bog, and 1 Radiant Fountain.
And what I'm playing is, like, of course, similar to that, because it's the same name of the deck, but it's like, it has a Moldrifter shaved, and it's got an extra Gurmag Angler, but they're pretty similar.
So 3 anglers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so. A few of the big inclusions up front, I'm not sure how I feel about the preordains. At least not a full 4. So I'm thinking of maybe doing like a 2-2 split on a preordain and think twice. Just for a little extra like card advantage, or like and then the last one is Dispel. I have a Dispel in the main deck, but obviously I think that is very meta dependent, and since I don't really know where the meta's going, Dispel might be something that's on the chopping block. But just kind of in the dark, I just kind of felt like I wanted to diversify, and instead of just having more removal, I just thought I'll have an extra counterspell. So what I could do with the Dispel is, if I felt like I didn't like the Dispel, I could always replace the Dispel with like an Exclude or something, or just have another removal spell.
I think Exclude is good right now. I mean, did you say you have Soul Manipulation in there?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I might make my list a little bit more similar. I don't think I would be doing the Dispel right now. I just don't. The decks that I'm thinking about, like, it would be good in, are ones that I am afraid of like Stompy. The amount of tricks in that deck is just, it's a lot.
Yeah, that sort of was my thought too, is it's not outright removal, but it still interacts meaningfully with most decks in the format, I feel like. Even the aggressive decks. So that was sort of why I felt like, yeah, I'll give it a try just to diversify my answers. But it's definitely one that I could cut. Like, it's very meta dependent.
I could see Heroic taking a little step back into the meta. If nobody is running Snuff Out anymore, that deck gets a lot more scary. I think that's pretty much what pushed it out. Like, it was holding around, it at least had like 5-ish points every week. I think that's going to depend on how good Mono Blue Delver is, because it's also not good to... Heroic has problems of, it's not good against bounce spells. It's also not good against Journey to Nowhere, since if they give their creature protection from white, all of their enchantments fall off. Even if it's like a Chomino's Blessing, all of your relevant enchantments are going to fall off, or your creature's just going to get exiled. Affinity might be taking a step back into the limelight. Without as many meaningful counterspells, that deck could be like... I still see a lot of counterspells, don't get me wrong. Like, I was surprised when I was going through my leagues that I saw as many of those as I did. Like, people are still playing blue in really meaningful ways. Like, you know, people are making jokes about, like, oh, this means ban island. Like, no, you just have to use your islands to pay for things now, instead of like having them there for like playing your creatures, and the rest of your deck just kind of happens. You know,
I think that Heroic definitely is one of those decks that could be good, especially if Skred is the dominant Delver deck. Yeah, Heroic, just like thinking about all the top decks, Heroic I think does pretty well against them. The exception being white decks playing Journey, like you said, but most of the other decks in this format are damage-based removal, and that's really bad for the not heroic player. You know, and even looking at my deck, the blue-black list that I just like laid out, that seems like I have a pretty soft heroic matchup. And so if decks like Heroic start to become mainstays again, that's when you want to look at upping your edict count.
Yeah, like, the more I look at this, the more I'm like, okay, I think we're returning back to how the format used to look. Or maybe it's just that they immediately go to decks that have been pushed out, and they're just like, can we play this again? Of like mono black control, affinity, I don't know, I guess, yeah, Stompy, Heroic, but like I see mono black control maybe being good again. Like Chittering Rats can really do a number to Tron. I guess mono black control used to be in a meta with a different version of Tron, but it was the number one deck in that meta instead of Tron. I think Tron has always been number 2, number 3. I think people saying that it's just going to jump to the top is a little bit hyperbolic.
Yeah, I agree. And again, like I said, I just don't see any specific deck right now jumping immediately to the top.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if we saw one deck at number one for power rankings, and then the next month another deck at number one, at least until the meta starts to flush itself out a little bit. But
I'm excited to play blue-black control, but there's just so many decks that I'm like, oh, how's that gonna do? I think Affinity just caught my eye right now of like, I want to cast a 4/4 for without paying any mana. Want to fling people.
Yeah, and I feel like Fling is a card that's gained a lot of equity too.
But really, there's going to be a lot of brewing opportunities. We've got a lot of new cards since this deck has taken over the meta. Like Scred Delver and like all of the Delver decks together, just the amount of dazes, the amount of counterspells that you're running into, I think pushed out a lot of like decks that want to play on curve. Like, I want to play a 4-mana spell. Oh, sorry, bud. You're playing your 4-mana spell on turn 6 because you're going to miss a land drop and you need to have 5 mana available. So it could be something completely new. That'll take a while for somebody to work out what that deck looks like. But
well, I mean, and plus in 2 weeks, we're going to have a huge splash up again anyway with Modern Horizons potentially bringing some new additions to the format as well. So
I honestly didn't know that it was that close to release.
Yeah, about maybe a little over 2 weeks. It's like June 6th.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, yeah, so much exciting stuff happening.
Yeah, we're going to be doing a set review pretty soon so
it feels like my job just got so much easier. It went from like try to stay positive about this format to like your shows are planned for you and like you get to do more of what you want. Anything? Should we move on? Is that what you're gonna say?
Should we move on and just kind of start to wrap up? And we've got a few things down here. That was one announcement, I guess, was like Modern Horizons is coming, so stay tuned for the set release. But there's been some other I guess controversy that we figured it's not usually something we delve into, as we're trying to more focus on just like the competitive side of the format and like what you can do to take down your leagues, etc. But this did feel like this is something that we wanted to talk about because it's going to have such a big effect on the format, or it has had a big effect on the format, and like it potentially does for people who are thinking about jumping into competitive leagues. But that's with the league farming.
Yeah, can I just run on this? Everybody has noticed, and Brandon has expressed his frustration with how long it takes to find a league in MTGO, especially in the competitive leagues for Pauper.
Well, it's not even at this point, it's not even finding a match. It's actually getting an opponent to accept your match.
Right. So what's happening is you queue up and it says you've been paired, join. You click the join button, you wait 30 seconds and it says, hey, sorry, it failed. And you do this over and over and over again. There's maybe a minute gap between. So if you do this 11, 15 times, then you've just wasted like half an hour of your time just trying to find a match. And it demoralizes you. You can't like look away from your computer. You can't walk away or anything and wait for like the sound to go off because you have to be there to accept the match every time. The reason for this is people are colluding with themselves pretty much. You set up your main account, you set up your side account, and up until like this week, I was like, am I the only person that thinks this? Is this just a conspiracy theory of you can burn tickets you can earn tickets by pairing against another account that you own and just conceding to yourself over and over again. If you go 5-0 this way, you earn a lot of tickets. You get all of your play points and then some back, and then you earn, if you sell all your chests, I don't know how the numbers work out, but it's like 30-ish. So yeah, that's actually pretty good. So if you can set up, I don't know, a bot or something to do this constantly all day, Wizards is just handing you tickets to ruin a league for somebody else. And Pauper is the smallest competitive group. Like, in any given league, there are, say, 50 people joined up, and not all of them are playing. They're just partway through a league. So what really brought this to everybody's attention is there was a deck posted because it 5-0'd, and it was the introductory deck that they just give you for creating a Magic Online account. It's just a whole bunch of 2-ofs. The creatures are like bears, like just 2/2 bears, maybe a little bit of upside. Not very good tricks, and it 5-0'd, and Alex Ullman retweeted it, and I actually retweeted it because I was like, oh, this is really funny. I don't recognize any of these cards. And then I started like thinking about it, and I'm like, no, this is the thing. This is somebody cheating. And Thornside went on the Reddit and did a big breakdown of like how this works, what's going on. So that's been really annoying, and if it takes that long to find a match, even with my huge excitement to play this week, if I play for 2.5 hours and an hour of that is just sitting at my computer hitting accept, I felt myself burning out and just being like, this isn't fun. Like, I'm just waiting. So that's been a big problem, and I think I don't remember where they said this or anything, but somebody in the comments on Reddit said it, so I'm gonna repeat it here. That's a good idea. Magic is looking, like, Wizards is looking at this of like, I don't know, seeing if there's a way to prevent it, like seeing if they can catch people who are colluding and ban them. They can just make new accounts, like trade off all their they would just trade off all of their stuff immediately to some other account, and then
I think that like the biggest fix that's coming is an announcement from I think just earlier today.
Yeah.
But they are going to combine leagues now, not just for Pauper, but across the board. And what this means is that you're combining the leagues, and you're like the competitive leagues. You're not getting quite the prize support that you were getting for a competitive league 5-0, but you're getting more than you would for 5-0ing a friendly. So they've kind of like met in the middle there with that. You'll still be able to get format points, etc. But yeah, I think that this is like the first big step to solving this problem, because this league farming was only possible in Pauper with these small queues because you could get into a queue for a league and just know that there was no one else there, and that you could have your two accounts join at the same time and get paired with each other, and you just would know that they're paired because there's no one else playing.
Yeah, I mean, people were posting. I mean, I thought it was super funny. Somebody posted on Reddit the M Love Bow experience, where they just played against M Love Bow 5 times in a row and posted it because Magic Online thinks it's okay to pair you against the same person over and over. But even if that wasn't the case, somebody who does a little bit of research can set up VPNs, and they'd have all different IP addresses, and they could have 5 different accounts. And so everybody's playing against this one other account, and they all end up with, this one account ends up with a league that looks clean. They have 5 different game wins from 5 different people. So I don't want to say just, okay, make it so you can't pair against the same person. That would, I think, weed out a little bit, but I think they're going to figure something out, and just having more people in a league is really going to help, because right now it's going from 50, and if you just added all of the same people from the friendly leagues, it's going to sextuple that.
Yeah, we're talking like 300. But I think the other thing that did contribute to those leagues was just the fact that you just didn't want to play the format. Like competitively, that's what happened to me, is I just stopped playing competitive leagues just in general. I just started playing friendlies because I could go play a competitive league and I knew what would happen. I'd play against Blue Black Delver probably 3 to 4 times, and then I'd play against maybe a Monarch deck or like a Tron deck, or maybe I'd see like elves, and like I would shake things up like, ooh, but it just wasn't fun. And I could go into a friendly league and just like, what am I playing? Oh, he played a cycling tap land on turn 1. What could be going on? I have no idea. And then, just all sorts of stuff could happen. And it was just fun. It was more fun. And so I think that's what we saw as people stopped playing competitive leagues. One, because the format was just kind of atrocious, and that just continued to spiral because people stopped playing, and then the match wait times would be, 15, 20 minutes to even just get matched once. And so more people stopped playing, and it just was this never-ending spiral until a few people realized that they could game the system, and that just has made it even worse.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think next few weeks, it feels like we went from like, okay, I'm like not excited, to all of my problems might be solved, and I could be living my dream life thanks to Wizards. And I mean, it's a little bit heartening that they put this is an interface change for Magic Online. It's going to be a lot easier to get into matches. Like, you don't have to know the system quite as well. You're just going to choose your format first, and then it's going to say, okay, you want to play Pauper? How do you want to play Pauper? You want to play in these like a friendly game where nothing's on the line? Do you want to play in a game that is, you're playing for this? Like, it's going to have all of the different options after you choose that, and then you choose your deck, and it just makes it easier. Everything's going to look different. So they're putting effort into the client, and that just makes me feel better about putting stock into the client. Of like, obviously, Magic
Online is dead.
Magic Online is dead. Magic Arena is the future. Die. Yeah, they're gonna let it die. They're gonna just, say your collection's worthless, and like, even if there's not any substance behind those, if what you're talking about is your $1,000 collection on Magic Online, you get nervous. Like, you don't know, like, maybe I won't play so much on Magic Online. Maybe I won't buy into Legacy or Vintage or whatever. And I am afraid that my favorite format, the only place that I can really play it, Magic Online, is going to die. Like, just a UI update feels like they care. They find, like, that's all I wanted, Wizards. Just show that you care.
End times.
Thank you again for listening. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so via Patreon at patreon.com/common knowledge, where you'll have access to the graph, our Common Coliseum, as well as helping us hit our first stretch goal of $50, where we'll be doing that 5-card blind tournament and our Card of the Week drawing. Thank you again to the rest of our sponsors, puremtgo.com and inkgaming.com. Don't forget to use that coupon code CCMTG10 at checkout with Ink Gaming to get a 10% discount on all the awesome gaming accessories that they have available there. If you'd like to support the network, you can do so by just going to YouTube, go to Constructed Criticism, and just subscribe, where you're going to get access to all that awesome content that Constructed Criticism is putting out. Limited time only has returned. So if you're a limited fan, go check that out. If you would like to get in contact with us, you can do so via Gmail at commonknowledgemtg@gmail.com, as well as finding us on Facebook at Common Knowledge and Twitter at CKPodcastMTG. Finally, if you'd like to reach out to me, you could do so through the Facebook group or at bclark_CK. Sean, tell the lovely listeners where they can find you if they so wish to do such a thing as to find you on the internet.
You can find me on Twitter at Lobbert8. That is LOBBERT and the number 8. And then you can also find me on YouTube. I've posted the Mono White Monarch list pretty recently that I love. I love that deck. You can tell me to put Guardian of the Guild Pact in there, and I'll continue ignoring your comment. I tried it, guys. I tried it. Didn't make the deck. But thank you guys for listening. I hope I can upload some more videos to YouTube sometime pretty soon. And we are uploading the tournament coverage we did for Oasis Games. And you guys have a great week.
Bye forever.